All right, well, I am going to go ahead and get started. This is a half-hour session on notices. I'll be focusing on creating and editing notices, automating notices, and doing a review of all of the notice job fields. We'll also look at the notice text table versus using print templates, but we're not going to get into print templates today, but I will review those in a future session because that's more in depth and it'll take longer than just a half hour. I'm just going to open up my chat here just in case. Feel free to use that for questions if you want. Otherwise, feel free to ask questions anytime during this. All right, so let's get started. We're going to essentially create a new notice today and set it up for automation. But before we do that, I want to jump into settings quickly and just look at the print template tab. So I'm going to go to admin and settings. This will take a second to pop up. And I want to look at the print template tab. So if you're a library that uses print templates or maybe uses them for some things and not other things, you want to occasionally take a look at this tab because this will affect how you run any type of notice. So for the first notice that I create today, I do not want to use print templates for. So what I want to do is I want to be sure that I have that off for the notice that I'm creating. So excuse me, I'm going to do an overdue notice this morning. Obviously, we have lots of different types of notices to select from. So I am going to select overdue, and you'll see right here, it says the use print template box is checked. I want to uncheck it for today's purposes. In the future, when we do look at print notice or print templates, we'll want to make sure that for whatever notices we want to use print templates for, that this box is checked. So I'm going to save my settings, and then I'm going to click OK to close that out. So now I'm in the notices function, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a new notice. Or a new job, excuse me. So in this, we have lots of different options. So the first thing is the notice type. We have overdue is the first one, but there's lots of different types of notices that we can choose from. For our purposes today, I am going to just select overdue, but again, we can set jobs for lots of different notices, for all types of notices if you want. And you can have the jobs just in here, you can run them manually, or you can set them up for auto notices to run automatically every day. And auto notices do run twice a day. They run at 6 a.m. and 1 p.m. and we can't change that. So keep that in mind when you are setting those up. So again, I'm going to select overdue notices. The first section is the location section, and we do want to make sure that we select something there. The default is all, and by all, it literally means everything in the system. So we obviously have 11 different schools within our system. So we don't want to use that as the default because then you would generate notices for other colleges. So we want to select location served, and location served is going to give us all of the different options for the schools and locations we have in the system. So some schools may have multiple locations, like Gateway, for example, has Elkhorn, Kenosha, and Racine, but they also have an all default. So if they wanted to, they could set up notices for their all default, or they could set them up separately for Elkhorn, Kenosha, and Racine. So for our purposes today, I think I'm just going to use Chippewa Valley as an example. Before I jump over to the notices for auto notice settings, I am going to come over here and look at the set options group. So the set options group, we use this options grouping for managing circulation and acquisition systems options. So you do want to be sure to select your library for that. So that again is just a drop-down box. Because I'm looking at Chippewa Valley, I'm going to go ahead and select Chippewa Valley Tech. Now remember, because I went into the system settings in that print template tab and turned that off, I don't have the option to use a print template. It's grayed out. If I were to go back in and change that and turn that on, then I would have an option to select a print template. But because we're not going to be doing that today, I don't have that option. The other thing to note is when you do have a print template enabled and you select a print template, under this options section here, you will lose some of these options. These are only available when you're not using a print template. That's because print templates are highly customizable, and you can include these things in your print template. So under the options setting, these also will change if depending upon what notice type you're looking at. So right now I have overdue selected. So you'll see under here, I have overdue level, overdue status, change address, include telephone number, include amount owed, excuse me. But if I were to change this to courtesy, for example, you'll see I have different options here. So those options are going to change depending upon the type of notice you're creating. So under options for overdues, the first one is overdue level. As a reminder, we have multiple levels for overdues. And what that means is you can actually, so let's say you have your system set up, and this is all done in the loan rules, to run 3 levels of overdues, meaning 3 overdues. So they get the first overdue, then they'll get a second overdue, and that third overdue would be the bill. So what it's basically, the system is asking you is, do you want to generate all of your notices, all the overdue levels, or do you want to just do level 1 and level 2, or just level 3 or something like that, depending on how many levels you have. If you leave all levels, and like I said, in our scenario, we have 3 levels of overdues, it's gonna run overdue level 1 and 2 together, because bills under notice type is it's a separate one, so we can select that. Overdue status gives us the option to do all types of overdues, or we could do just missing or claims returned only. So those are looking at statuses of items, or we can exclude missing and claims returned, because if it's missing or it's been claims returned, obviously the patron knows that they've reported it missing, or they've reported that they've returned it. So you could exclude those if you wanted to. For today's purposes, I'm going to leave it at all overdue items in all levels. I'm going to leave these unchecked, but again, you could include the telephone number, you could include the total amount owed if you wanted to in the notice. All right, so looking at the notice, auto notice settings right here, we want to, for our purposes today, I want to create this as an auto notice. So it's going to automatically run and I don't have to worry about manually running it. So I'm going to select the enabled box, but you'll notice that as soon as you do that, all 3 boxes are automatically selected. And I recommend unselecting move all notices to print and unselecting send via FTP. What the move all notices to print, what that is going to do is, instead of sending directly to the patron, it is going to send them all to whatever you set as a printer, either a physical printer, or maybe you set an email, your own email, or you have a generic email for your school. It would send it to that. Or send FTP means it's going to send it to a file on the server that you're then going to go and have to retrieve. So most likely, if you're using auto notices, you want those notices to automatically be sent directly to your students or faculty. So we just want to select enabled and then leave those other 2 blank. The other option that we have in here is under schedule, we can select the days of the week that we want the notices to run. So if you're closed on Sundays, or maybe Saturdays and Sundays, and you don't want your auto notices to run those days, you can just select Monday through Friday. So what I'm doing is just clicking on Monday, holding the shift key down, and then selecting Friday, and that'll select all of them. But otherwise, the default does select all of those days. So if you are closed and don't want notices, or even if you're not closed, but you don't want notices to run on a certain day, you can unselect that. So then we'll save that. So now I've got all of my settings in here. So I want to do a save as, and this is going to ask me, we have to select a printer. So no matter what, even if you are setting your this up to be auto notices, you must select a printer. And I'm going to select send to email address. But what this is really saying is, what the system is asking for is, if a email for whatever reason can't be sent to a patron, maybe they don't have an email address in their record or something like that, you select a local printer, and it will then send those emails that it couldn't send out to patrons directly to the email address that you selected. As I mentioned before, I prefer using an email address versus a local printer. With auto notices, because they run at 6 and 1 p.m., 6 a.m. and 1 p.m. And if you do select a physical printer, then on the off chance that printer you selected isn't on or it isn't running, you could lose any notice that is sent to it. So it's safer just to select an email address. So I'm just gonna, for this purpose, I'm just gonna put in my email address, say okay. And then I have to name it. So again, typically, since we obviously do share this with multiple colleges, we ask you to put your college name first or college initials. But for today's purposes, I'm just going to put test overdue and save that. And I'm done. So I'm going to close out of it. So now if we needed to make any changes, or if we wanted to update or run the notice, what we would do is, I always sort these because they're just listed as they have been created. So if you click on the job name, it's just automatically any one of these column headers you can sort by. So if you wanted to sort by your login, but last time it was ran, you can do that. I always sort by job name. And I named this test overdue. So here it is. And if I wanted to make a change to it, I could just hit edit. And here I can make any changes. If I wanted to turn off auto notices, I could do that. If I wanted to make any modifications, like include telephone number and include amount owed this time, I can make those changes. I hit save. It's still going to ask you about the printer no matter what. Every time you make a change, it's going to ask you. It'll leave your default in there that you had before, but you can make that change as well if you needed to. If you want it to go to multiple email addresses, you would just put one and a comma and then another email in there. Save that. Yep, I want to save the same job name and so forth, and then I can close out of it. Now, if we actually wanted to manually run these, again, oops, click that, go back to test overdue. I'm just highlighting it, and then I'll click prepare. And again, it's going to ask you what you want to set it to. And you can see here the default current printer is send to email, the email addresses that we have in there. I'm just going to say yes, print, and then it's going to prepare my notices. And I know that CVTC, that's what I selected. They do have auto notices run. It's 9 a.m. right now. Their auto notices already ran, so there's nothing in here to run. However, what I do want to show is, let me just prepare that again. Okay. What I want to show here is when you're looking at running notices manually, I know we have a couple libraries, especially maybe when they have their overdue set up to run automatically, but their bills, they may choose to run manually. And the reason they do that is they want to have a copy sent directly to the patron, but then they also want to keep a copy, maybe print it off or send it to their own email so they have a copy of the bill. So they have proof that it was sent out. So in these cases, what you would want to do is generate the notices. You can either first, or excuse me, prepare the notice so that you get the list here. And then you can send to the patron first. So then all you would do is click send notices. That there will be a number here for how many notices there are. And you just click send notices and it's going to email the patrons. However, before you do that, you want to select the do not clear button, because if you send them out and you don't select that, once they're sent out, you can't rerun those. So select the do not clear button and then close it out and go back in and prepare it again. You'll get the same notices, and this time select move all to print queue. And when you do that, it's no longer going to email the patrons directly. It's just going to list them all so that you can print. And then it's going to print to whatever printer you selected. And by printer, again, that can mean an email. So you can email them all to yourself if you want to, or you can directly print them to a printer. Once you're done with that, when you do run that the second time, you want to uncheck the do not clear so that they do get cleared out. Otherwise, those same bills are just going to keep showing up every single time you go to manually prepare your notices. So the other thing that I wanted to point out in this notice tab, when you're running, occasionally you will see an item not sent. Usually then you can click on that tab and it'll list the item and it'll give you the reason, like an error message. It's pretty rare that it happens, but sometimes you'll get a system message and it could mean that there wasn't a valid email in the patron record for whatever reason. Or on the even more rare occasion, you'll find that there's something called a broken checkout link. It's where the system doesn't see that the item is still checked out to the patron in some aspects. So in cases like that or an error, you can just let me or any one of the project managers know, and we will open a ticket with Innovative, and Innovative actually has to go in and fix that. Once they fix that, you can then rerun your notice and it will generate and it won't give you that error anymore. Okay, so that really is just generating a notice, setting it up for auto notices, and then manually preparing those. Since we aren't using or looking at print templates today, I wanted to look at using the notice text table. So that's the default. If you're not using print templates, we have we're going to go to admin parameters, circulation, and then there is a file called text of circulation notices. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And I think each school has some default text in here, even if they don't use it. We have quite a few, maybe a little bit more than half of the libraries within WISPALS do use print templates, but we have some that do not. So you can always add a new notice type for your school by using one of the blank fields. If you come in here and you want to use a new notice that maybe you haven't used before, you can add text or you can modify your current text. So let's just look at an example today. I know that CVTC does use print templates. So what they have here listed they've got a courtesy notice, they have an overdue notice 1, an overdue notice 2. They're actually not using these right now because they do use print templates, but we'll go ahead and click on that notice, the 62, and then hit edit. And what this is going to do is allow us to edit the text of the actual notice. So anytime that you want to modify what your notices say, maybe if you're having a temporary closing or anything, you're doing a survey or you're any type of information that you want to include in a notice, you can modify this notice text at any time and then go back in and change it back to what you previously had it. So this is just simple text. you don't want it to be too long, obviously, especially if you print these off. But we aren't limited, I believe, in the text amount. So you can add quite a bit of text in here if you wanted to. Just remember that this text will be at the top, and then you'll have all of the actual item information below it. So again, you can modify this. We do have a Spanish version. CBTC doesn't use this as their text. Again, they use print templates, so they don't have a Spanish version in here. By default, when you add an English version, if you don't put a separate Spanish version in there, it just copies whatever you put in the English version into the Spanish version. So you don't have to have actual Spanish text in there. When that would go out is if a patron had selected to receive the Spanish as their preferred language. So again, you can make changes here. Once you make a change, you just hit OK. And again, if you have, let's say, you have never run a courtesy notice or something like that, and you come in here and you don't have any text for courtesy notices, what you do is just select the blank one, click edit, then you can name it whatever, your library's name, and then courtesy notice, add your text, save it by clicking OK, hit cancel. If you make any changes, hit save. If you make a change and forget to hit save, when you hit close, it will ask you if you want to save. I didn't make any changes, but it is still asking me, so I'm just going to say no since I didn't make any changes. But what you do want to notice, let me go back in there, is what you want to make a note of. If you do happen to add a new notice type, and you use one of those blank fields or lines, you want to note the number, because that's really important. That is where you actually need to make sure that is in your loan rules. So again, if CBTC wasn't using print notices anymore and they updated their overdue notice, I would want to remember that for my overdue notice one, it's number 62. And now we'll just jump over really quickly into the loan rules so you can see what I'm talking about. So that is under admin, parameters, circulation, and then loan rules. And for each type of loan rule that CBTC has, and obviously all the libraries have multiple different loan rules because those are what control the length of how long a patron can have something checked out, how many times they can renew, whether or not they can place a hold, and so forth. So for this purpose, we'll just look at this first one here. I'm just going to click edit. And again, we were looking at the text line 62. So what I want to do is make sure I'm going to come down here and look for the text of the first overdue, and I want to make sure it's at 62, which it is. And they also have all of these set for the first overdue, second overdue, third overdue, and so forth at 62. So if they weren't using print templates, this loan rule knows to use the text in that text of notice text table. So this is where you would make the changes. And again, for see here, like here they have a courtesy notice text, it's using line 64 and so forth. So I'm going to just cancel out of that because I didn't make any changes. But again, if you did make changes to those tables, or that specific table, maybe you added a line, you want to make sure it's reflected in the loan rules, and you'd want to check all of your loan rules. But again, that is only if you're not using print templates. You can still have text in there, and you can still have text in those numbers listed in your loan rules. But if you have print templates enabled, it's going to ignore all of those. All right, so another notice that I want to look at quickly today is the due date receipts. And again, if you're not using print templates, you want to go into your settings and look at that print templates tab again. And for due dates, I can't remember what I have selected. So I'm going to look at due slips, and I do have the print template enabled. So I'm going to uncheck that again, just so we can go in and look at the settings. So I'm going to save my settings. I'm going to say okay. And this time, to look at your due slips, you go to admin and options. And your due slips, just as a reminder, are the notices that when a patron checks an item out, they either can get like a little receipt or maybe an email sent directly to them as with all of their items that they checked out and their due dates. So we have a due slip tab here. And here, looking at this, we have a few different options. And again, just as a reminder, print templates are going to give you much more control over what is included and stated on your due slip. These are just the defaults. So the first is the delivery of the due slip. You can select whether it's print or email or both. The default you can select. For my purpose, I have it set to email. However, if you don't want to have a due slip, you can have it set to no slip. You have two options, or two lines for text, and only two lines. Again, print templates are going to give you more flexibility and you're able to add more text on there. But you can, I think some people who don't use print templates, they'll just have like their library name listed and maybe a phone number or an email address. You can also choose whether or not to include information on a due slip. You can put a patron's name or a barcode, which would be the patron ID, which some libraries might have concerns about having that printed on a slip for privacy reasons. So you do have the option to select neither. And then down here, what these numbers mean, these are defaults. So you can select defaults. If you make changes, you can go back to the default. And this you just might have to play around with. What this means is in slip order, that's just the order that it's going to be listed in. So it's going to list the title first, then the barcode of the item, and then the due date. The width, what that means is the width of the receipt. So if a title is longer than 25 characters, it's going to cut off at 25 characters. And same with the barcode and due date. So you can play around with that. The default settings are meant to work well with your standard size receipt printers. So if you do have a different size receipt printer and you want to make changes, feel free to do that here. But again, with this due slip option, you are a little limited in the options that you can set, but with a print template, you have more flexibility. You can add images if you want. We have some libraries that include a logo on their due slips. But again, that's pretty much it for due slips. We're kind of limited on what you can add. So I'm just going to select OK to close that out. The other notice that and I know I'm running up to 30 minutes, but I just wanted to mention quickly is the SMS text notices. So these that we have are opt-in only for patrons, and they have this option through their account in Encore. Let me just bring that up. Have an example of Encore. I'm going to log in. And where a patron would do this is under My Account. They click Edit Account, and they get this option here. Just open this up. And this allows you to, here under Mobile Settings, you click Opt In. And you can add your phone number and then click Submit. So there's just a lot of information in here about opting in and opting out, how to like stop receiving texts or quit, cancel. You can use any of these words: stop all, end, quit, cancel, unsubscribe. And that will stop the notice, the text notices from working. So I am going to, oops, see here. And then once you do that, it gives you patron information updated. Close it out. And then when you go back in, it shows you that you have information in there, that you've opted in. But that is all I have for just this first session on notices. I will be doing a future session on notices that will go a little bit more in depth, and we'll actually look at print templates and how to modify those and make changes in print templates. But are there any questions? All right. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for sitting in and joining me. Hopefully this was, if you're brand new to notices, hopefully this was helpful. Or even if you've used them before, maybe hopefully you learned something new. But thanks for joining me and have a great day.